Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show. What is up? Welcome back to Big Fat 5, a podcast financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum. This week's guest is the Bill Bruford. Bill is a legendary drummer whose illustrious career spans over 5 decades, marked with pioneering contributions to progressive rock, jazz fusion, and beyond. Emerging onto the music scene in the late 1960s, Bruford gained prominence as the drummer for progressive rock icons Yes, where his intricate rhythms and dynamic playing style helped define the band's sound. His tenure with Yes produced several critically acclaimed albums, including Close to the Edge and Fragile, solidifying his reputation as one of the foremost drummers of his generation. In addition to his work with Yes, Bruford became a member of the seminal progressive rock band King Crimson and influenced generations of musicians. Over the years, Bruford's musical journey evolved, leading him to explore jazz fusion with his own band, Earthworks, and dive into experimental projects that push the boundaries of musical expression. A prolific recording artist, respected educator, and insightful author, Bill Bruford's multifaceted career is a testament to his unwavering dedication to pushing the limits of creativity and leaving an indelible mark on the world of music. So, I hope you enjoy the 5 records that helped shape Bill Bruford into the drummer he is today. And the cool thing about this is getting ready for the show, me and Bill were talking about what his 5 would be, and he actually has a playlist on Spotify with a truckload of songs that have inspired him. And so he had me choose 5 from that list. So I have linked it in the show notes. Please go check out that list. And thank you so much, Bill. This was an honor, and enjoy the show. Cheers. When creating, how do you balance structure and spontaneity?
On a drum kit, you mean?
Yeah.
Or in life?
Well, hey, we can answer both of those. I'm sure people would need to know both.
Well, as in life, so on the drum kit. I mean, the person you're speaking to is very like the guy who's playing the drum kit. Mm-hmm. The style and the character I have as a person, and yours too, will come out on in your playing. It's very clear, really. I play a lot of jazz, and I'm interested in interaction. I'm interested in music which has a great deal of interaction. I say something, and because I've said that, you say something else. And the tenor saxophone played something else, and now we've all changed because my first idea has now moved on, and this was all happening at micro speed, the speed of the improvising musician. I like that a lot. That's what I do at home. I'm retired, really, from big-time kind of music making, so I prefer small-time music making. In fact, I'm an amateur musician now, which I think is rather a nice idea. I used to be a professional musician for 41 years, and now I'm an amateur musician, and I'll tell you what, I enjoy it just as much, if not more. So improvisation, that's what I do. now. So I'm heavily slewed that way. I'd rather the thing didn't have fancy, complicated parts. And so I tend to avoid those if possible.
Do you have any personal parameters when you are creating for a drum beat? Like, are there any non-negotiables?
No, I don't think so. I would like to be intrigued and not quite know what it is that I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
trying to find something I haven't configured before, a different thing. I've been trying to steal somebody's idea, but it doesn't work that way, but it might work this way.
Mm-hmm.
Different voicings on the instrument, ways to make things sound different. All those things will send a little green light on in my head saying, I could use this. This might be of interest with musician B or musician A. So those things are important. I don't tend to settle on the first 4/4 bar I can think of. I tend to go to bass number 2 or bass number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is a personal question. So I love having fun with style. Where did you buy your t-shirts back in the day? There's so many damn cool videos of you with the coolest pattern shirts.
T-shirts or
button
button-up shirts. Oh, I don't know. I didn't have a single store. All over the place. I'm not a clothes guy anyway, but
it seemed like you were. You look so good back. I mean, you look great now, but I'm saying like the shirts back in the day.
You're very kind. I don't know why. I mean, as a kid, when I first came to the United States, I really didn't understand the Boston Bruins. And for some reason, I saw the Boston Bruins kind of logo around in an airport store. And I said, oh, that's cute. My name's Bill Bruford, B, get it?
Sure,
I'll put that on the front of my kind of jeans or my T-shirt or something. And so people will figure out, I won't put it on a bass drum, but I'll put it on my chest.
Yeah.
So people will know who I am. And I didn't realize I put myself into a snake pit of sports hell, because some people don't like the Bruins and some people support them a lot. And some people don't. So I walked into that as a foreigner coming to your beautiful country.
What things, and I'm assuming you have a million, but what influences outside of the drums, what non-drummer has influenced you as a drummer, I guess is the better way to say that?
In the sphere of music, of course.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Well, other musicians, David Bowie, not because I was a particular fan of his songs, but because I never knew what he was going to do next. And I like that about an artist. Repetition is not really my thing. I don't really like going on a long legacy tours, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting out the same old music. And David Bowie kept going right to the end. Miles Davis, same reason, but also economy of playing. The genius was Dizzy Gillespie, who could play unbelievable stuff, or Freddie Hubbard and stuff. And Miles didn't really. He didn't have those chops. So what are you going to do? Musicians have to think about this. And he fashioned a style for himself, necessity being the mother of invention. He couldn't play, he couldn't keep up with the other guys, so you figure out a way to do it. And I think that's lovely. I think I probably learned that from him. I probably said to myself, well, I'm not going to be Buddy Rich here, so I need to think of a way I can approach drumming, will convey my character and my choices that aren't all blinding speed. Necessarily, might be, but not necessarily.
Along that same vein, on Bruford and the Beat, I remember seeing you talking about your left hand and how you didn't like how you held it, so to cut through the mix, you had to do the rim shots and stuff. So
yeah, there you go. That's a very good example of that.
Speaking of, by the way, so you have met this gentleman. His name is Eric Slick, and he plays in the band Dr. Dog. He plays with Kevin Morby, Natalie Prass. He's also a solo artist. And you are actually one of his, Bruford and the Beat was one of his top 5 a few years ago. So I asked him, I was like, Eric, I'm going to be talking to Bill. Ask him a question that would be kind of unique. And he wanted to know, was the Simmons drumming on Waiting Man influenced by Steve Reich?
Absolutely. Absolutely so. In fact, funny you should mention that, because I have a YouTube channel, and this Friday, that very song live in concert, I'm uploading it.
Oh, awesome.
And the uploading of these things, there's a description that I do every week, and describing the song and its context and whys and hows and nuts and bolts of it. And it's funny that Eric or you should be talking about that, because I've just finished doing that particular description. which is could be
Wow.
500 words. It may be 1,000 words. It's quite long.
Yeah.
I forgot what the question was. Yes, indeed. It's influenced by Steve Reich's piece called Drumming, which is one configuration of drums with several players, a couple of players on either side of the drums. So we did a stripped down version of that.
That's awesome. That drumming has also been another person's top five. So
Oh, great.
shout out to Steve Reich.
Well, yeah.
All right, well, let's just hop into Bill's Big Fat Five. So the album is Drums Unlimited. The artist is Max Roach. Release year's 1966. And the key track we're going to listen to is For Big Sid. And the drummer is Max Roach. So, Bill, take it away.
Well, I think when I was a kid, now going back to when I was quite young, I probably had three influences, I suppose, big time. One of which would be Art Blakey, one of which, all Americans, I'm afraid, no Brits in this. Art Blakey, Joe Morello, probably for his fantastic technical ability, and Max Roach. And Max stunned me because he was so elegant and economical on the kit, a bit like Miles. He just had invented this whole new approach to drum soloing. And if there is a drummer listening to us here right now, and you should know about Max Roach, so go and get a listen to some of this stuff if you can. And his drum solos are really effectively beautiful little compositions, very elegant, all about space, all about time, and really thinking not so much about chords and melody, but thinking about design. So he used to say, well, think of my drum solos as architecture, which is a nice way of looking at it. Why don't we play a little? I did kind of tribute to Max Roach. I did one of his songs called The Drum Also Waltzes. I recorded that as a lovely 3/4 thing. Recorded that on an album with a partner of mine called Patrick Moraz, keyboard player, on an album called Flags. And I also did a sort of homage, if you like, to Joe Morello, who one of his albums called what's called Far More Drums was a fantastic. So the album was called Time Further Out. And on that album was a solo of his called Far More Drums. And it's a very, very influential piece of music. I absolutely adore it. And I did a sort of pastiche in the same kind of sound, same kind of style, even ripped off a few of his licks on an album of mine called If Summer Had Its Ghosts.
How was jazz initially introduced into your life?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I was at a school and, the senior guy was leaving the school and he was the jazz drummer. And I was just getting into it. I don't quite know how I got near a drum kit. My sister had influenced me by giving me a pair of brushes, because a boyfriend had given her a pair of brushes and said, why don't you swish these around on an album sleeve, a thick card album sleeve, and it sounded just like a snare drum. Mm-hmm. And it did sound great. And I progressed from brushes to a pair of sticks. And then, I was very influenced by everything that was going on in the school. And I learned to play ting, ting, ting on a cymbal before I played straight eighths. So I fell into jazz. All these guys were jazz heads, so they were here. And as I say, Morello and Blakey and Roach. We listened to Ringo and Charlie Watts, and we thought that was nice, but we didn't like it as much as the previous three gentlemen. And we were just, hard jazz heads. So that's how I grew up, really thinking. And then when I joined Yes, I thought I was joining a jazz group. I didn't really know what I was joining. It didn't bother me. It turned out it wasn't a jazz group, but that's how I started, really.
Well, you made it your own.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so this is a fun one. So this is a more contemporary one, and I going through your list, I was not surprised, but I was just happy seeing all your lists because it is all over the place. So this is a new one. It's Lewis Cole. The album is Live Sesh and Extra Songs, which is a fun, kitschy little title. The artist is, of course, Lewis Cole. Release year's 2019. The track we're going to listen to is F It Up - Live Sesh, and of course, Lewis Cole. So how'd this one get on your radar?
Well, I don't know. YouTube, I guess we got a lot to hate YouTube for, but a lot to thank it for as well. Because, YouTube has bought all this stuff. The fact that I can sit here and click and get any music I want at any time. And, on the grapevine, people say things and they say, I just heard this guy, Lewis Cole, you'll never believe it, And I listened and absolutely adored him. I mean, first of all, he can play like a very accomplished musician. So he wrote carefully. He plays absolutely beautifully, but also it's the kind of DIY punk nature of it that's really fun too. I think there's the YouTube happens to have him in his own apartment, I think, or his own house or something like that, or somebody's house, and with a huge band jammed in the corner. And it's just completely DIY. He plays a bit of keyboards, leaps to the drums. It's really good. I've seen him here in the UK. He's a very talented guy, very, very young, very funny. Everything you want young guys to be. We old guys, we're very stuffy now. We don't play. I mean, who cares about rock music? For God's sake, that feels like already. It feels like the 20th century. It feels old. So does the word jazz. And somehow the new guys are across both. They're blurring and bending, and clearly they know both and they can play both. Bear in mind, when I was a kid, you couldn't play both. First of all, rock drummers were hopeless at jazz. Jazz drummers were even worse at rock. Absolutely awful. And even if you did, as a jazz drummer, try to play some rock, everybody would say you were selling out. But you don't know that phrase, selling out. But that's how it would have been, So you could like Hendrix or you could like Coltrane, but you couldn't like Hendrix and Coltrane. So that's kind of where I came from. So to watch young people today who were so talented and so much better than we were, playing right across these genres and being able to play it all and then invent something out of it. And we'll get into more drummers later on in this conversation who do that. I suppose Lewis Cole was one of those in a way. Here he comes. 1, 2. He's changed road.
Nice cooking. People go listen to the whole thing. Yeah, I've seen a few videos of him breaking down some of his beats, and He's sneaky. Some of those things are a lot more complicated than they come across.
Oh yeah, it just sounds like a 4/4 easy, but no, there's a lot of clever stuff in there. Really
Yeah.
good.
All right, well, number 3, the album's Caravan. You already mentioned this gentleman, but it's Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and the release year is 1963. And then, yeah, Art Blakey is the drummer, so take it away.
Well, he reminds me so much of my youth. We've gone back the other way now. Right now, I'm hearing this when I was 15.
Mm.
So, half a century ago kind of thing. And the BBC TV would have these great American stars come in, and on primetime TV, Saturday at 6:25 in the evening, you'd have the Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, with Freddie Hubbard and great people, Sonny Stitt, and all fantastic jazz just being fed on the nation's main TV channel.
Is there an archive?
There is. I think they are for sale, but you can look them up on YouTube, and it's called Jazz 625. And the recording quality was just beautiful, and to this day, I don't know how so few microphones and everybody placed carefully, a live announcer and a live audience. And we heard jazz, proper, the real thing. So I grew up with jazz in that way. And one of those people was Art Blakey. So I'm intrigued by the band. I think the band is actually terrific. And this guy at the back, he seems to be controlling everything. Nothing would go anywhere until he cracked the whip. And when he cracked the whip, boy, did they take off, And as a kid, I'm watching this thinking, this is great. I didn't realize that drums could have that enormous, powerful instrument at the back has so much dynamic control within the music. So it's a drum lesson. Of course, the whole thing was a drum lesson. And his music has stuck with me ever since, and particularly his sound. He had a deep sound on the toms, a wonderful press roll, and a deeply sort of African sound, which is really nice. So you'll hear it coming up on Caravan.
All right, so now, I probably edited this out, but I tried to skip over Caravan, but now we can talk about Mark. Sweetheart of a guy and also a great player. And I love the story of how David just found these guys. But anyways, the album is Black Star. The artist is David Bowie. Release year is 2016. I remember the day that came out. I can't believe that's 2016 now. But yeah, the key track's Black Star. And like I said, the drummer is Mark Juliana. So yeah, take it away.
Well, I was intrigued by the story, like you were. I knew him, Mark, the drummer. I knew him. He'd been over here playing jazz at Ronnie Scott's a lot with the bass player whose name I've temporarily forgotten. And I gotten to know him, and absolutely admired his drumming, which is really good. So I've known him since he was kind of unknown, I guess. I was kind of a keen patron of his stuff. I just liked the whole story that Bowie was looking for people, and he thought he'd rather have jazz guys than rock guys because the kind of, like I'm saying, people who cross over, and a lot of them live in Brooklyn or New York, more so than in London right now. Those guys can go between cutting edge rock and cutting edge jazz, prog rock, if you like, very easily. So it was a very wise choice from David Bowie, I think. The music itself, the circumstances, he was dying, David Bowie, so it's a sort of deathbed statement, if you like, is that the music is kind of creepy, kind of disjointed. And Mark has this deep snare drum, and the drum kit is kind of out of balance a bit. And it doesn't matter. All this adds so much to the atmosphere of the track that he's trying to create. There are other people who could have done it, I think, but the four of them, I think it's Danny McCausland, I think, the saxophone player, Tim Lefebvre on bass, and I can't remember the other guy, another person I don't know. And they were a settled unit, and David, I think, wanted to have a settled unit to do this. It was a real honor, I think, for Mark to do it, and I love the whole circumstance of it. And of course, I always think his performance is fantastic. His own groups are terrific. Has Mark been on your show?
Yep.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, Mark.
In the villa of our men, in the villa of our men, stands a solitary candle. In the center of it all, in the center of it all, your eyes. On the day of execution, on the day of execution, only women kneel and smile. At the center of it all, at the center of it all, your
It just makes you keep wanting to listen. You never know.
Yeah.
It's wow.
Yeah, I mean, you can't figure out the drummer's approach to start with. It seems so disjointed. Is it a groove? Not really. Is it art? Maybe it is. It's a strange approach, and it doesn't settle till around the line on this day of execution. Around there, he starts playing a recognizable, drum line that we can all play. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how he got there.
Yeah.
It's almost like the drum is so deep. It's such a deep, slopped off kind of snare drum sound. For Tony Visconti and David Bowie, it's unusual drumming, and a lot of producers would say, forget that, we ain't using that. Powerful record, I think, all in all.
All right, so let's talk about Ginger Baker. So Fresh Cream is the album, and the artist is Cream. Release year is 1966. The song we're going to listen to is I Feel Free. And yeah, old cranky Ginger Baker is the drummer. So take it away, and then we'll listen.
See, I knew I knew him or knew of him when I was 14 or 15 years old. And in a way, he was my pathway into drums too. So on the British side, it would only be Ginger Baker. It was the guy I was listening to. Mm. And he was a tough guy at the time. I mean, he was only about 22, for heaven's sake. But I thought he had a very cool way of smoking a cigarette. A cigarette there, and the stick and the ash wouldn't fall off the cigarette because he was so relaxed. So immediately as a kid, I'm immediately start smoking because I want to be Ginger Baker.
Of course.
He turned into a kind of cranky guy, but at the time he was the man. and he was swinging like crazy with the Graham Bond organization. And so I would go to clubs because in the States, you usually couldn't do that. But at 14, 15, 16, I'd go with some of the older guys I was hanging with. And we'd go and hear these strange people, John McLaughlin and Dick Hextall Smith and Graham Bond on organ and Ginger Baker on drums, or Peter Baker as he was known then. And it was tough. It was a very strong urban kind of rhythm and blues. A lot of Ray Charles, a lot of alto saxophone, very jazzy. Great, absolutely mind-bending stuff for someone like me. And then eventually they cut this big album in 1968, Wheels of Fire, I think it was. I'm not sure when this particular cut was made, but anyway, it was around 1968, 66, 68, which is when I was starting. You know, I was all ears for everything that I could possibly get my teeth into. And Ginger linked me, I suppose, to rock music in the sense that all the great British studio drummers were all jazz drummers, and they were all falling into rock. Who was the guy who played with Hendrix?
Mitch Mitchell?
Mitch Mitchell, same guy. He was with the Riot Squad, which was a kind of a rock band, but also a studio guy. He could play anything. And all those people were falling into this new explosive place called rock music, which was post-Beatles, was, you know, awash with money, and you could sort of do anything. So these guys formed a fantastic band, and I Feel Free was just symptomatic of the times. It's a beautiful pop song. The harmony vocals are great. It's got some harmonic interest. Baker's intro right at the beginning, he plays I Feel Free, that particular phase on the toms, you know, two hands, two toms, and then kicks into the hi-hat. He plays most of the song on the hi-hat, half open, kind of very strong, very strong. You'll hear it now.
All right, here we go. Bum 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 bum. I feel free. Bum 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 bum. I feel free. 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 Bum 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 bum. I feel free.
Here come the toms.
The sea, you're all I want to know. I feel free. I feel free. I feel free. I can walk down the street, there's no one there. Though the pavement's a one huge crowd. I can drive down the road, my eyes don't see, but my mind wants to cry out loud.
So cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how light he's not hitting the snare hard, and the bass drum is relatively quiet in the mix. I mean, these days, to a lot of young ears listening with us, Ben, you know, they might find that strange. Why is the drummer so sort of fluid and a little bit in the back? And same with early Yes records, the drums are pattering away at the back. You know, these days, as we know, to my ears, the bass drum is overkill. It's stuck in the middle of your face and it pummels you to death. So I think in my generation, the drums are in a more subtle and supple place where you could play more things on a bass drum, actually, of interest.
How involved in the mixing of the early Yes records were you personally?
Well, I was very young, you know, and I had no studio experience at all. They assigned us a studio engineer who wasn't much good, I didn't think. But it was far be it from me, you know, to say, you know, you should turn this up and that down. I didn't want to do that. I was very young. So, and it's completely new to recording studios. My first sessions really were Yes record sessions. So I didn't know how hard to hit the drums. I didn't know that you could have different instruments in your headphone balance. Really, I mean, I had not been to a music school that taught me that stuff, so I learned it the hard way.
Was it just bass and you were just like, this is what I got, I guess?
Kind of, kind of. I had an awful lot of Peter Banks guitar in one ear and somebody's echo reverberation in another ear.
So was he out of time?
Kind of, yeah. It's all very strange. But somehow I got through it. You learn fast, I think. We did in those days.
And you were kind of talking about money was being put into rock, and it reminded me of a statement you made talking about maybe it was your conversation with Vinny, which I love that conversation, by the way, on Vinny Caluda's podcast. But just talking about how like rock today, or just like the state of being, Yes and King Crimson wouldn't have the funds. Like you can't really have those bands anymore because the money's not being given to bands that just want to make interesting music like that, and it's unfortunate.
It's all but impossible now to run a band with creative music, as it were.
Yep.
I regret. I'm unhappy to have to tell you that you and your generation are content providers, which is a terrible phrase. I used to be a musician, but now I understand I'm a content provider, which is something that I have to provide to another person who's going to, do something with it. You don't feel free. I feel free is not really going to swing it today, I'm afraid. It's difficult to do. Unless, of course, you can do it at home and you get lucky. Mm-hmm. But that's another whole topic of conversation, I think. Perhaps not for this.
Well, I know you have a heart out in a few minutes, so I do want to talk about one song that is probably not, I don't want to say what people expect, but there's not really a lot of drums, if any, in this one. So this is The Lamb, and it was originally performed for the first time in 1982. And I'm going to butcher this guy's last name. Is it John Taverner?
Taverner.
Yeah,
yep.
It was. I mean, you probably know the story. It was music to be behind the song, a poem called "The Lamb," if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But talk about that, and then we'll listen to it. Why did it inspire you?
Well, I mean, I don't know much more about it than you do, other than that it's very popular here in the UK. I'm sure it is in the United States too. It's kind of associated with Christmas. Mm-hmm. Because, the Christ baby Jesus was, equated with a lamb. And that comes up, of course, a lot at Christmas time. It happens to have dissonance and consonance in it a lot, particularly in the sort of second section. It's just beautiful, where choirs, can split into two. And they're singing a semitone apart. And you get that incredible dissonance, and you think that's so brave. But I take my hat. I don't sing, so I take my hat off to singers who can hold a note one semitone different from you, which is difficult. And of course, there's no drums, but the shape and power of the music is influential to me anyway, in and of itself. It's a lovely piece of music, I think.
All right, here we go. The Lamb.
Oh, there you go. There was a nice dissonance.
Haunting.
There it is. Look out, look out, look out.
Wow.
Then shivers down my spine.
Yeah.
John Taverner said he wrote it on the train going down from London to the West Country in England in 15 minutes. Isn't that amazing?
Of course.
It's hard to believe, but let's say it took a couple of hours, but isn't that amazing? To be able to handle music in that way. He probably wrote it on the back of an envelope.
Yeah.
Lovely. British composer.
Well, Bill, I've taken up plenty of your time. It's been an honor talking to you. I can tell how nervous I am talking to you. You're such a force. I know people are going to be so excited to click on this episode. I hope you know how much people love you and appreciate all you've done.
Well, you're very kind. I do actually, because people write all the time, and I don't respond all the time because I simply couldn't, because there's too many people. But one can tell from a YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and you can tell the feedback on that. People are very gracious. I've done almost nothing to deserve it, but people are very sweet about their comments about my musical efforts and general my approach to music more broadly, which is more interesting than just being a drummer. Although heaven knows that's interesting enough. So the broad position is something I like talking about.
Well, just in general, your view on your career and just musical risk-taking, you're very brave when it comes to that. And you're very, also, you know who you are and you want to pursue what makes you excited. And you've walked away from things that people would be like, I would give anything to continue doing that. But you're like, no, I have to do what makes me happy and fulfilled. So just that right there should inspire people. But this has been such a pleasure and a checklist on life. So thank you so much.
All right, Ben, my pleasure.
I will speak to you soon, Bill.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Big Fat Five.
All right, since we talked about him during the chat, this week's big fat favorite is Eric Slick, who has his own solo career but is associated with Dr. Dog, Kevin Morby, Natalie Prass, and many more. And like I said, one of his choices was the instructional video Bruford and the Beat. The release year was 1982. And of course, the man of the hour, the drummer, was Bill Bruford. So here is what Eric had to say about Bill. After years of obsessing over Ringo in elementary school and then John Bonham in middle school, I was introduced to Yes by my parents in 8th grade. The drumming sounded alien to me. I had no clue what the drummer was doing. It was like a flurry of notes that felt as if they were dangling in midair, and I could grab them for only a second, and then they'd fly away. My dad told me the drummer was Bill Bruford, the best in the world. We had just gotten the internet, and I would research what Bill Bruford was up to every day. Maybe he was on tour, and I'd get to see him play one day. Unfortunately, that day never came. In 10th grade, I started getting the Interstate music catalog, and they had a slew of VHS instructional videos and some DVDs for sale. I saw Bruford and the Beat and gasped. I had no idea that he made a video. My birthday was coming up, so I asked my parents for it, and that was all I wanted. This is before YouTube, everyone. I would sit for weeks waiting for a VHS tape to arrive at my house like a clown. The tape arrived, and I must have watched the thing over 300 times. I had a 12-inch color VHS TV in my bedroom, and I put it on before walking to school. I'd come home and watch it after school. I wanted his setup so badly. A Ludwig Superphonic snare, Tama Octobans, Simmons drums. I researched it and eventually bought a Simmons kit off eBay with some money I'd saved up working as a busboy at a pizzeria. The tape ended with a performance by the 1980s incarnation of King Crimson. The rhythm guitarist struck me, and I discovered his name was Adrian Belew. It is still mind-blowing that Adrian would ask me to join his band a few years later, and I'd eventually meet all these people. I finally met Bill Bruford in 2016, and I completely blacked out as we talked. He was so kind and even complimented my playing. What a mensch. All right, cheers, everyone. Bye. And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using iZotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at iZotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!